What is up, my itty-bitty classicists? Today I'm here to look at Augustus literary sources, and I'm joined by my friend Caligula, who is, in fact, a ghost horse. So let's pull out the Augustus book and get stuck right in. The first source today is Temple of Palatine Apollo by Propertius from 16 BC. The priest makes the sacrifice, let silence aid it, and let the heifer fall struck down before my altars. This is in reference to one of their Greek sacrifices where they use a heifer, which is a cow. They bring it up to the altar and they slaughter it, part of a blood sacrifice. Give me soft cost, Mary, and offerings of lovely incense, and let the loop of wool go 3 times round the fire. Sprinkle me with water, and by the new altars let the ivory flute sing of Phrygian jars. May fraud be far from here, may injury depart for other skies. Let purifying laurel smooth the priest's fresh path. There was Augustus's ship, sails filled with Jupiter's favour. So Apollo of Actium gained his temple, each of whose arrows destroyed 10 ships. I have sung of war enough. Apollo the victor now demands my lyre, and sheds his weapons for the dance of peace. So this is painting Augustus as a very religious man, because he's surrounded, his sails are filled with Jupiter's favour, and Apollo's helping him, and of course he's descended from Venus, and his father deified in 42 BC, Julius Caesar. That makes him the son of a god, as we discussed in the Didier video. So again, this is just painting Augustus as a religious leader. The next source is Metamorphoses by Ovid from 8 AD. This is the deification of Julius Caesar. You and Augustus, his son, will ensure that he ascends to heaven as a god and is worshipped in the temples. Earth is ruled by Augustus. So, obviously, like I said, 42 BC, Julius Caesar was deified, and Augustus set out to fulfill Julius Caesar's will, which had a lot of things, but one of the big things was go after the assassins as well, and so Augustus ensured that Julius Caesar was deified, and obviously he put them in the forum. He built quite a lot of things and referenced quite a lot for Julius Caesar, his adoptive father. And when it says Earth is ruled by Augustus, this is just setting him literally at the limits by the gods. He is just as godly as any of the gods in the pantheon at this point. The next one is quite a long one, the Res Gestae Didier Gusti, written by Augustus himself. I was Pontifex Maximus Augur, one of the 15 commissioners for performing priestly duties, one of the 7 priests responsible for sacred feasts, Arbal brother, companion of Titius, and fetial priest. By new laws passed on my authority, I brought back many examples of ancestral practices that were becoming obsolete in our time, and I myself handed on many exemplary practices to posterity that could be initiated. This is in reference to the Leges Iuliae, the Julian laws, where Augustus has a massive religious reform. He goes on about adultery and marriage and childbirth and lots of things like that. Both privately and as a city as a whole, the citizens unanimously and continuously prayed for my health at all the pulvinaries. By a decree of the Senate, my name was included in the Salian hymn, and it was sanctified by law that I should be inviolate forever, and that I should hold tribunician power as long as I shall live. I refused to be made Pontifex Maximus in the place of my colleague who was still alive, when that priesthood that my father held was offered to me by the people. In my 6th consulship, I restored 82 temples of the gods in the city by the authority of the Senate, missing out none that needed to be rebuilt at that time. So, building his reputation here, he's a really good religious leader. He's rebuilding all these temples. He's reintroducing the Arbal Brethren and the Quindectium Veri. He's looking after the Sibylline books, and he even has his name in one of the sacred hymns. And the last source, this is quite a short literary source section, is The Lives of the 12 Caesars by Suetonius, 121 AD. He carried out an extensive program of public works: Forum with its Temple of Mars the Avenger, 22 BC, Palatine Temple of Apollo, 20 BC, Temple of Jupiter the Thunderer on the Capitol, 22 BC. He had the Temple of Apollo erected in a section of his house on the Palatine favoured by the god, so the soothsayers claimed. since it had been struck by lightning. His dedication of the shrine to Jupiter the Thunderer was prompted by a narrow escape on a right march in Cantabria, 26 BC, when a lightning bolt scorched his litter and killed a slave with a torch walking in front. Not wishing to deprive Lepidus of the chief priesthood during his lifetime, despite his exile, Augustus waited until the triumph of his death, 13 BC, to assume the office. After doing so, he gathered all the Greek and Latin prophecies still in circulation, which were either anonymous or the works of authors devoid of any authority, and burned more than 2,000, keeping only the Sibylline books, which he edited and placed in 2 gilded cases under the pedestal of the statue of Palatine Apollo in 12 BC. So there's a lot to unwrap here, but again, Suetonius is basically confirming what Augustus said in the Res Gestae. He did actually do lots of the things that he claimed to have done, building all these temples and re-establishing old practices, and especially not taking Lepidus's title before he died, even though he'd been driven into exile. And he's got a temple in his house, which is, just fantastic. But what's really interesting is the Sibylline books, which, as part of the Quindecim Viri, only he was allowed to look at. And Augustus claimed that it prophesied the coming of a golden age, which obviously he took to be himself. But we can't be sure because only he was allowed to look in them, and he edited them, as Suetonius said. Supposedly, so he could have written that in himself. So that's all for the Augustus section. There's not much on it, but there's obviously a lot in the Res Gestae, and Suetonius confirms it later on. But thanks very much for watching, and have a great day.